Hi Pop Shop America family, my name is Brittany and today I'm here to show you how to make this moon painting. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you're notified of all of our upcoming videos. Now let's get started on making this moon painting. This is the kit I'm going to be using. This kit is from Pop Shop America, so let's go over what will be in this kit. Within the kit, you will have 2 black acrylic paints, 2 white acrylic paints, a gesso, a foam brush, 3 sponges, a sawtooth furnishing, metal foil, 2 plates to mix your colors, and you also will have an MDF circle. Let's begin by removing your sticker from your circle. Next, we will want to start with our gesso material. So grab your gesso and grab your foam brush. You will want to do about 2 to 3 coats of gesso on the entire circle. The gesso will ensure that you seal the wood before you begin painting. Make sure you get all the way to the edges just to ensure that you cover the surface completely. Allow for 5 minutes for each layer to dry and then continue with the next layers of gesso. Remember, 2 to 3 coats. After completing your 3 coats of gesso and allowing it to dry completely, continue on with your first layer of black acrylic paint. After completing your first layer of black paint, allow this to dry for about 5 minutes. While we wait for this to dry, let's mix some colors together. You can actually use your popsicle sticks that is in your kit, or if you subscribe to the previous box, you can use the palette knives that you had in that. I'm going to start to mix my colors using the paper plates. Because we're going to use a good amount of different variations, use the black straight from the container. Also grab your white and put that on your palette. What I'm also going to do is, now that we have the white and we have the black, put a little bit of the white here in the center. And then go back to your black and put that in the center as well. What we're going to do with this section here is mix these 2 colors together, and we can use this as our mid-tone. If you don't like the tint of this color, you can still use some of this and branch off to make your different gradients. You will want to mix about 5 different tones. So what I'm going to do is mix this here, scrape a little bit up, put it on the opposite end, grab a little bit more white. That to the side, and begin to make a little bit of a darker white. Also have your paper towels on the side for you to be able to clean off your palette knives if you need to do so. So looking at the mixture that I have already made, you can clearly see we have our white, we have our second tone, we have a third tone, fourth, and even fifth. If you would like to add more tones, you can, but 5 I would say is more than enough for this project. Don't forget to actually clean off your palette knives before continuing on, so you can just lay them flat. Okay, so this is dry, so we can continue on with applying our next step. Within your kit, you will have your sponges, but I already have some that I've used and I like. First thing you would want to do is begin with the mid-tone. Dab your sponge into that mid-tone that we mixed earlier and begin to dab some of the darker areas. With each of your strokes, make sure you're intentional for where you're placing it down. You don't have to smudge it in, you just have to dab a little. Within the caption, you will have your guide for the image that we will be using for today. So with this first step with using the midtones, what I'm doing is just adding a base. So these sections here that you can see in your reference photo are all of the areas that I'm applying first. When you're painting, it's always a good rule of thumb to begin with the darker tones first and then work your way into the lighter tones or the highlights. Now let's move on to a little bit of a lighter color. So this was the mid-tone. Let's go here and begin to apply that on the other edges of the mid-tones that we added here. Keep in mind, if you do happen to add any of the colors from the lighter tones within your sponge, that is okay. I like how that's coming out. It's amazing how it comes out when you begin to add the different tones within the canvas. With this layer, you want to make sure that you cover the surface completely with the proper tones in the areas of the canvas. So take the time to actually look at the shapes that you will have in your reference photo. I'm working on some of the outside shapes that we have here. It doesn't have to be perfect when we're working on this, but we want to get close where it's believable. So in this section here, which would be in this area that I have, you'd actually want to probably turn your sponge to the side and begin to add this portion here, where that is the division here. So if you were to look at this area, I just made a pocket. So continue that first process that I just showed you to begin to add shapes, which would be the craters. So in this area, or this portion of the painting, you can slow down and actually observe the shapes and take a little bit more time if you need to do that to define some areas. If you did run out of the mixtures that you made earlier, now would be a good time to mix more paint. I'm gonna mix a little bit more than I did before. Maybe a lot more. A lot of people think with art in general that it has to be 100% like the picture. And it really doesn't. It's just really good like guideline, to be honest. Because I do that myself. Like I think, oh my gosh, it has to be just like it. But the reality is no one has it when they're looking at your artwork. You're the only person that knows that. And I have to remind myself. Sometimes I think we're too hard on ourselves. Okay, perfect. Now that you mixed more colors, continue with adding more shapes. What I'm going to do is add a darker tone. So I'm going to mix up a little black with the sponge. It's okay to do it with your sponge and just dab it into this next color. Keep in mind to move your sponge around to make a shape that's similar to the reference image. Notice how I'm turning the sponge in particular directions just to imitate different shapes. While you're mixing your colors, if you want to switch to a lighter tone and all of your sponges have paint on them, use your paper towel and just dab some of the paint off. So that way it's not fully loaded with pigments. Now I want to go back into this section with a lighter tone. So I'm going to put this back into a little bit of the white. And I'm just going to dab a little of the excess off on the side of the plate. And then I'm going to continue in with adding this area that's going to be the crater right here. So I'm just going to add the lighter tones on the edges here. And if I see any more areas that have white or is the lighter part of the reference photo, I'm going to continue on with adding in those lighter areas. So now that you've been using your sponges, what you can do is turn one of the sponges, if it's dry on one end, turn that over to just dab and blend a little where you've added paint recently that's still not dry yet. So this is just adding like a blending edge here, but that's one way that you can use it. You don't have to do this, but if you want more of a cohesive area, when it comes to a lighter tone to a darker tone, you can actually just blend. It's like a push and a pull. That's the only way I can really explain it. Like what I'm doing, it's like, I just noticed like one thing about this process, it just was a lot of push, pull, go, push, pull, go. That's the best way I can explain it. Like pulling out details. Like if you look at that one, it's like a lot of that too. So like this would be the point where I'm doing it a little bit darker because like it's fading a bit. So what I'm gonna do now is add a darker tone where it just brings out the shape to reform it. Where it brings more definition into the craters as well too. So if you're comfortable just mixing the colors using the sponge as well, you are welcome to do that. You don't have to use the palette knives at this point. But sometimes just to save time, I'm doing this. I might make it a little bit lighter. Because the little variations, like even if you have a little white, that's okay at this point. Because we're going to be layering more tones on top of this. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that mid-tone color. So dab in a little bit of a darker tone and begin to add the darker areas of your reference image. Now that you've added some darker tones, begin to move on to the lightest part of the image. If you would like to add this little streak here, what I'm gonna do is pinch the sponge like this and just add it in that way. You can also glide it across. Okay, so now that we are done with the overall shape and we're happy with how it looks, let's add our metal foil. So there's big chunks in here. What we're going to do is just kind of crush these up a little while the paint's a little wet still. And with this portion, it doesn't have to be perfect either, because we're just going to be adding in these little highlights for where these little dots are. So I'm going to use my fingers, but you are welcome to use a brush if you have that, or use your fingers like I am. And just adding it sparsely across. Kind of crush them up as well too. And if you have bigger pieces, that's okay too. The foil just adds a little bit extra embellishment for the highlights. So you're gonna want to add the highlight where you see these bright lit areas on the moon. So the paint is still tacky, meaning it's still wet, so it's taking the foil really well. Oops, look, a bigger piece, so just, if you don't like that it has that much, just remove some of that. So I am very content with how the foil came out. Allow this to dry for about 24 hours. After you have allowed it to dry, you can go ahead and get your sawtooth and apply it to your painting so you can hang it up. I am going to go ahead and clean my palette knives off and my brushes. This was Brittany Ellis, and it was fun crafting with you guys today. Make sure you tag us on our Instagram account, and we'd love to see what you did. Go ahead and tag us. See you guys next time.